What's the real difference between a world-changing success and a multi-billion-dollar disaster? It's almost never just about being on time or on budget. The real story, well, it's a lot deeper. So today, we're going to pull back the curtain and look at the hidden drivers that really decide if an ambitious project soars or if it crashes and burns.
All right, here's our game plan. We're going to start by dissecting some truly spectacular failures to see what we can learn. Then, we'll flip the script and explore the powerful trio of culture, process, and people that really lays the groundwork for those big breakthroughs. And by the end, you'll have a much clearer framework for looking at your own projects. Okay, first up, let's talk about what happens when things go really, really wrong. It's the huge, catastrophic failures, not the little hiccups, that teach us the most powerful lessons. So picture this. It's 1998. The Iridium satellite phone is about to change everything. The tech was genius. A whole constellation of satellites promising a perfect connection literally anywhere on Earth. The hype was off the charts. Expectations were, well, they were sky high. And after all that money, all that hype, it took just 9 months. 9 for them to file for bankruptcy. So what on earth happened? Well, they built this incredible technological marvel, but they totally misread the market. While they were busy launching satellites, cheaper, smaller cell phones were completely taking over the world. They had a solution for a problem that was vanishing right before their eyes. But, a bad market fit is just one way to fail. Sometimes the problem is much more immediate, boiling over inside the pressure cooker of a single, fateful decision. Yeah, just look at the 24 hours before the Challenger disaster. This timeline, it shows a fatal breakdown in slow motion. You had engineers presenting clear, data-driven warnings about the cold. They said don't do it. But under this immense pressure to launch, management just overruled their own experts. It is such a tragic lesson in how a broken decision-making process can just silence the facts and lead directly to a catastrophe. So if that kind of epic failure is one end of the spectrum, what's on the other? Well, it starts with the environment, the culture. The kind of place that allows ideas to be tested, to fail, and, crucially, to evolve safely. And look, an innovation culture isn't about having beanbag chairs or free snacks in the office. It's the fundamental DNA of the company that makes taking risks even possible. It's built on trust from leadership and this core belief that small, fast failures aren't just okay, they are the price of admission. It's the tuition you pay to learn, to adapt, and to eventually find those game-changing breakthroughs.
Take a look at Disney's Imagineering. Their entire culture is built around one thing: storytelling. Every single project, whether it's a ride or a hot dog stand, gets filtered through that lens. Does it tell a story? This cultural foundation guides every single choice they make, and it ensures that super detailed, consistent experience. It's not just a guideline, it's the air they breathe. And Lego did something pretty similar with their Future Lab. They made a really smart, deliberate choice to protect radical innovation. They built this, safe bubble where their team could explore totally wild ideas, the future of play, completely walled off from the day-to-day pressures of their core multi-billion-dollar brick business. It's a really powerful way to make it okay to experiment. But, a great culture isn't quite enough. You need a framework to operate in. And that brings us to process. And here's the thing you absolutely have to understand. The playbook you use for improving something is completely different from the one you need for inventing something brand new. You can see the two paths so clearly here. On one side, you've got incremental innovation, making what you already have a little better, a little faster, or a little cheaper. It's a predictable, pretty linear path. But on the other side, you've got radical innovation, creating something from scratch. And that path, it's messy, it's ambiguous, and it demands a playbook that is totally comfortable with uncertainty from day one. Now, for those really high-risk, radical projects, frameworks like the Agile Sprint are just invaluable. It's not some rigid step-by-step plan, it's a continuous loop. You learn, you build, you test, you learn again. The whole point is to navigate that complexity by getting real feedback from real users, early and often. You're basically reducing risk with every single loop. And what happens when your process breaks down on a really complex project? Well, the results can be just staggering. Boeing's 787 Dreamliner was delayed by years because their global outsourcing process failed. Parts would show up from different suppliers and they just didn't fit together. And Airbus had a billion-dollar headache because their French and German design teams used incompatible versions of the same software. It meant the wiring harnesses were literally too short. Process isn't just bureaucracy. It is the absolute lifeline for complex projects. So we've got culture, we've got process, but what about the most unpredictable variable of all? The people. Oh yeah, this is where politics, influence, and sheer personality enter the room.
So let me ask you this. Who has the real power in a project? Is it the person with the fancy title on the org chart, the one who's officially in charge, or is it someone else entirely? The truth is, there's usually a huge gap between the person with formal authority and the one with real influence.
And this gets us to what's called the project manager's paradox. Think about it. They have all the responsibility for a project's success, but often very little formal authority. They can't hire people, they can't fire people, they can't give anyone a raise. Their only real tools are negotiation, persuasion, and influence. Their success depends almost entirely on their soft skills.
And within the team, you see this critical duality. We all know about the project champion, right? The passionate advocate who's pushing an idea forward no matter what. But just as vital and way rarer is the exit champion. This is the person who's brave enough to stand up and yell "stop" when a project is clearly headed for a cliff, even when nobody else wants to hear it. You absolutely need both.
So how do you pull all this together? How do you make sure the lessons from one project, whether it was a success or a failure, don't just vanish into thin air? You have to intentionally build an organizational memory, a brain for your company.
And the answer isn't just writing up some report that's going to gather dust on the server somewhere. No, it's about creating an active, living system for capturing what works and, just as importantly, what doesn't, and then sharing it.
Building this organizational memory requires a real system. I mean, you have to ask these questions. What even is a best practice for us? Whose job is it to find them? And how do we prove it actually works? Then, who owns it? And how often do we check back to make sure it's not outdated? This is the kind of discipline process that turns individual lessons into powerful, reusable wisdom for the whole organization.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground. We've gone from catastrophic failures all the way to the very foundations of success. Now let's bring it all home and figure out what to do with it.
Really, the biggest takeaway is this. Success is not an accident. It's the result of consciously designing and nurturing a system where culture, process, and people all work together. They're integrated, they're aligned. If any one of those pillars is weak, believe me, the whole structure is at risk of collapsing the minute the pressure gets turned on.
So I'll leave you with this question to chew on. Your project has a plan. Of course it does. They all start with a perfect plan on paper. But when that plan makes contact with reality, with all its messy, unexpected problems and human complexities, is it going to survive? Does your project have the culture, the process, and the people it needs to adapt and actually thrive? That's the real test.